Unusually, the front door of the pub was locked. The AI that was always watching could only hear faint cursing from the rear courtyard, a long neglected space that held the casual debris of centuries. Danu stood defiantly as she wrestled with something that had probably been a picnic table in a previous life. Now it was home to the 1,000 varieties of bugs, moss, and lichen that a wet climate could produce. She smelled of rot and sweat, and it was raining again. It didn't help that she could have done all of this with a thought, a simple wave of the hand, but it had surprised her to know that she didn't want to, that she thought better and faster when she did something physical. Finally, she wrenched the stinking mess into her wheelbarrow and propped the spade against the wall. Just because she could, she ordered all the wildlife to hop out and find somewhere new to infest. A stream of obedient critters began flying, crawling, hopping, and lurching out of the barrow and out of her sight. Of course, that was the moment that Sean stuck his head around the door, his eyebrows raising as he witnessed the odd parade. He paused for a moment. It was never dull around here anyway. "Danu, you have a couple of guests." Danu raised her stained hands and grimy fingers. "Do I look like I want to open up? Tell them to come back later." Sean shook his head. "I've got a feeling about these two. I think you'll want to meet them. Why don't you clean up and I'll settle them in front of the fire. Nip up the back stairs if you don't want to be seen looking like a scarecrow." Danu took a breath. Sean's instincts were honed by a lifetime of judging people in general weirdness. She trusted him, and it would give the bugs time to bugger off. She warned the rest of the courtyard to start packing and join the exodus while she was busy. She'd have a dry day tomorrow, even if the weather satellites didn't know about it yet. "All right, Sean, I'll be down in a few minutes. Pour me a pint. I think I deserve it." Sean nodded and made his way to the front door and the unlikely pair. The man looked in his mid-30s and was, in his opinion, frazzled. He looked like he had half-dressed in the boring clothes typical of the XCC representatives that occasionally sidled in, but he had been forced to grab a hat and jacket from home, so this was done in a hurry. The boy looked about 9, with straight brown hair and wide green eyes that flickered around constantly. His clothes were odd. Sean couldn't pin it down, but there was something going on. He gave up on his scrutiny, aware that his guests were getting wet. "Danu says she'll be down in a few minutes. Come inside and dry off. The fire is lit, and I'll get you both something to drink." The man stepped in quickly. His tanned skin might mean he wasn't used to Irish drizzle, that gentle rain that manages to soak you from the inside out. The boy just gave a serious nod and entered carefully. Sean closed the door behind them and silently wondered who had turned up this time. The two newcomers stopped as they entered the bar properly. Most people did, the ones with any kind of spark in them. The XCC man hesitated and then moved swiftly to the welcoming fire and its ancient reassurance. The boy stood with those wide eyes taking in the deep history, the sense of hundreds of years and the thousands of lives that had passed through. He turned to Sean and asked in a clear, piping voice, "Is it always this busy in here?" Sean looked around the empty pub. This was definitely going to be one of those days. "Well, son, this is as quiet as it ever gets in here. Maybe when you are older you can stay late and find out. Come on, I'll get you a Coke." The boy seemed to consider that. "That would be interesting. Thank you." Then his eyes seemed to light up and he moved to the bar and hauled himself up onto a bar stool. Sean watched him take the place where Erin had first sat, the place where Danu had announced her existence. He wanted that bloody chair out of here, but Danu wouldn't part with it or explain. She had just shrugged and told him in that sweet voice that it belongs right where it is. He called over to the boy, who seemed to be examining the bar closely. "Son, go over to the fire and warm up. Plenty of time to sit at the bar when you're a bit taller." Without protest, the boy jumped down and made his way to the bench. Danu took a quick shower and tied her hair back. Normally she would just let it dry itself, but apparently she had guests, so she did it with a thought instead. Then she dressed. She pulled open her closet and smiled, amazed by how many clothes she now seemed to possess. She could have pulled them from the very air, but some of her people had such great skills that she preferred to buy them. If she concentrated, She could feel the tailors' and dressmakers' every decision, every choice they had made along the way. Out of simple whimsy, she pulled out the first dress she had ever made herself, the one that reminded her of her father and her very first day. Some little bell was ringing in her mind, telling her that it would be appropriate. The mirror told her she looked exactly as she wanted, so with a nod to her reflection, she headed downstairs, and whatever new adventure had arrived. Sean went behind the bar and carefully poured a Coke. He'd find out what the XCC wanted in a minute, but he wanted to settle the boy first. He dropped ice and lemon into the glass and searched about for a straw. Bloody things always got moved around. When he was satisfied, he carried it to the child and placed it on the table. "There you go, enjoy. Would you like some crisps with it?" That seemed to be a bigger question than Sean was expecting. After a pause, the boy said, "I believe so." Sean gave up and grabbed a couple of packets from the wall and brought them over. The child seemed intrigued, so he left him to it and indicated to the man to follow him to the bar. Once he had taken his familiar place, he asked, "What can I get you? It's a dirty old day to be traveling." The man hesitated. This had definitely been a day. "I'll get a pint of lager, please. Will Danu be long? I really need to talk to her." Sean began filling a glass. "Yes, I'm sure you do. We get that a lot. She'll be down when she's ready, but I don't imagine it will be too long since I'll be pouring her pint next. You interrupted her gardening, but I don't think she'll be too sorry to get in out of the rain herself." With that, he began pulling a pint of stout and let the man stand there for a moment. He realized he was being uncharitable to the man. It probably wasn't his idea to be sent to bother Danu, but it was always someone. He relented a little. "The boy seems nice. Is he yours?" The man seemed surprised by the question. "No, just my responsibility for the moment. He's quiet enough until he starts asking questions, then it gets complicated quickly, but he is polite." He glanced over at the boy and seemed to speak only to himself, wherever he's from. He left Sean to finish Danis's pint and went back to the fire. In a moment, he was staring into the flames with his concerns roiling in his mind. Whatever Danu was expecting when she arrived, it wasn't what she got. Sean saw her descend the stairs in the same green dress she had worn on her first day, and his eyes opened a little wider. He sometimes forgot how beautiful she was, how her presence filled the place. She seemed to hear his thoughts, and flashed him a quick grin that said everything that it needed to. Then the boy spotted her, and lost his solemn composure as a huge smile filled his face, and he leapt up from his seat, running quickly to Danu and grabbing her around the waist in a tight hug. Danu held her arms free for a moment, lost. Not many people would grab her unexpectedly in case something important suddenly fell off. Only her parents had ever truly embraced her, and she was thrown for a moment. She gently put her hands on his shoulders and smiled down at the young face. She could swear she saw the child's eyes glisten with tears. "Well, nice to meet you too, young man." The boy seemed to pull himself together a little. "Oh, I'm sorry. It's just that I've heard you sing for so long, and now you're right here." He seemed to remember something. "Your dad told me to find you here. He said that you were beautiful and clever. He said you should talk to the man first, 'cause he said they always send a man. Mine seems worried. Is he okay? What were yours like?" Danu smiled. "Oh, they were worried too. Oh, Eddie, what have you sent to my door? Never mind. We'll have a long chat in front of the fire after I talk to your man, okay?" The boy gave her a happy smile. "Sean gave me Coke and ice and lemon and 2 kinds of crisps so I can wait." Danu patted the boy's shoulder and smiled. "Well, that sounds like a good start. Tell him to give you hot chocolate if you would like to try something else while I find out what the man wants." With the turn of speed that all small boys are born with, he vanished and resumed his seat in front of his prizes. Danu didn't have to wait long as the man hurried across to her, his drink forgotten on the table. She waved at him to sit at the bar and waited as Sean brought over her pint. She was beginning to think she was going to need it. Sean carried it over with a slight toss of his head. "Getting lazy, girl." She just shrugged. "Yes, you might as well grab the XCC his pint and make the boy a hot chocolate before you come nosing around to listen. Just keep an eye he doesn't wander for the moment." Sean snorted. Don't be telling me how to suck eggs. I'll keep an eye to the bar while you sort out whatever needs sorting. I'll make up the guest rooms when you're settled. I imagine the young lad won't want to go anywhere else after that greeting he gave you, and the XCC chap is probably under orders. She could hear the questions unasked in his tone, but he knew as much as she did for the moment. The man seemed to settle as he made himself uncomfortable on the bar stool. Danu reckoned pubs probably didn't feature much in his world. She gave him a calming smile. Relax, you got him here in one piece. Tell me what you can and who you are exactly. I hate to say he's your problem now because I haven't much to tell you about his plans. My name is Gary Sumners. I'm just an entry officer for the XCC working out of Dublin Spaceport. We hadn't had a landing, so I was just filling in endless forms when the boy turned up. He just walked in, past the security doors, past the scanners, past things you are really not supposed to be able to. He arrived at my desk and told me he was there to see Danu. That triggered a whole new set of alarms, as you probably know, and then in the next minute half of the XCC was rolling up. He took a deep gulp of his beer, his brain now grasping that his long day might be nearly over. So all sorts of people start asking the kid questions, but he wouldn't answer anything beyond that he was here to see you. He seemed to think we were all very dull. I have kids his age, so I gave him a chair and a packet of the lollipops that I keep handy for crying children. He just told everyone that he wanted to see you. They offered him a shuttle to take him here, but he said he wanted me to take him. He said he had been told there would be a man, and I was the only one who had been nice to him. So I grabbed a few things from my locker, and here we are. Danu could feel some of the stress leave the man. I imagine your vehicle is now a full AI working for Intel, and I've got half a dozen battleships overhead right now. The man's eyes gleamed a little. More. Try the whole home fleet. He flew in without a ship and landed undetected right into Earth space. If you listen hard enough, you can probably still hear the screaming from here. He had forgotten who he was talking to. She did listen. He was right. The babble was beyond belief, so she cut into the chatter. Please, he was sent here by my father, and I have him sitting in front of the fire drinking a Coke and eating crisps. I'll call you if I need you, so you can all stand down or go back to sleep or whatever. Leave this one to me. Sumners looked slightly startled as whatever implant they had fitted him with gave an indignant squeak and fell silent. Okay, that's not something I've ever seen happen before. Danu shrugged. We have a treaty. They were getting very close to the edge of what I'm willing to allow, and I don't like people playing with guns around my pub. So the treaty is, you won't do anything unless you want to, and they don't do anything you don't want them to do. Nice. How'd it get them to agree to that? Oh, that. I turned off Yellowstone before it exploded and shattered a few meteors that were going places they aren't allowed. They got really friendly around then. She looked at the man, obviously tired. Gary, go and talk to Sean and get settled into your room. I'll talk to the boy. You can join us when you've had something to eat and have explained to your family why you're on the other side of the country. This is in my hands now. It didn't seem that her words registered as he stood up and went to find Sean, just a slight hitch in his walk as his brain caught up with his ears. He kept going. Danu grabbed the waiting hot chocolate that Sean, in his prophetic way, had made 2 cups of. She figured the one with all the marshmallows and sprinkles was for the lad, and the one full of Baileys was for her. She needed to give him a raise, except he was already ridiculously wealthy. She hadn't told him that the garden out the back was for him, so that was going to have to do. It's why she wanted to do it by hand. He would treasure her sweat more than any miracle. Lazy indeed. She plonked the hot chocolate in front of the lad and settled beside him with her own mug steaming away. He looked confused and then suspicious. Why is my one lumpy? She grinned. Yours has extra sweets in it because Sean likes you. I'm his boss, so I don't get any. The boy seemed to struggle with that. You can have one of mine if you like. The childhood unfairness was very clear to him, and was very obviously battling his enthusiasm for sweets. She laughed. I'm joking. Sean made me what he knows I like, and he gave you everything he knows that growing young men like. With that cleared up, the boy took a hesitant sip and found a marshmallow. From his face, he approved. This is better than the Coke. Danu nodded. After the wet and the cold, it is. Not always in the summer. That's why we have both. So, what's your name? The boy frowned at that. I don't know yet. Your dad said you would find it for me. He nodded towards the empty seat where the musicians usually sat. Your friend there told me you were clever with names. He said he never told you his one and you still worked it out. Danu didn't drop her hot chocolate. She just took a long minute. The man who sat there was deeply loved. I'm sorry you didn't get to meet him, but he was very old and he wanted to see what happens next. He had very firm ideas about that. The first time she had ever admitted to knowing his name was when she had carved it into his gravestone. The boy nodded quickly. I know, but he loved you, so some of him stayed put. He likes the music. His eyebrows seemed to squeeze together to explain. You know how time is squishy? Like you can pull on one bit and push on the other? Like when I came here, that's how. I pushed it one way and pulled the other, like the ships do. I used to watch them all the time, but they always just kept going. I was getting sad until I heard you sing. He's like that, in the squishy bit of time, just listening to the music. He says you can have his name now. The eyebrows released as he seemed content with his explanation, confident that Danu now understood. Danu didn't often feel like crying. She had cried at that man's funeral, the loss of so much music and joy. Well, that's perfect timing because I know a boy looking for a good name, the name of someone who loved his music and his family, his friends. She reached over and grasped the boy's wrist. How would you like the name Michael? The boy seemed to think about, his mind trying on for size. Somewhere behind those green eyes, a decision was made. It is a name you loved. I will wear it proudly. The boy stood up and stiffly offered his hand. Danu, it is very nice to meet you. I am called Michael. He tried to say it solemnly, but he couldn't stop the giggle at the end. Danu took the offered hand and turned serious. Welcome, Agra, Michael of the stars. My home and hearth are open to you now and forever. Then she smiled with the power of her local sun. A little later, Michael was trying to fish out the last marshmallow with his tongue and making odd slurping noises when Danu interrupted his sport. Well, I'm not listening to that for the evening. Come on, I'll show you how to make it. The boy looked surprised and just held out his hand, a fresh cup appearing from nowhere. Like that? Danu shook her head. No, you can use that trick some other time. This is how my people do it, so that's how I do it. Unless I'm tired and alone. Otherwise, I'm just reminding them of things that they don't want to think about very much. The cup disappeared and Michael stood up and followed her. My people don't make much of anything. Mostly other people. They don't talk much either. Danu took in the information. Well, mine never shut up. Let's make the hot chocolate properly and go from there. Sean led the XCC chap up the stairs. He still remembered when he would have had to pause at every landing. Not anymore. Danu had told him, with a straight face, that it was because she had made the stairs shorter. He suspected shenanigans. Finally, they reached the door and he fumbled with the lock. Don't mind me. The system is cursed. The XCC have strip-mined the gear in here so many times that I think your shower may be sentient. He sniffed. They don't do that anymore. Not since the coffee machine had a breakdown and started crying. Danu needs coffee. It would be better to start a war directly than make her drink instant again. She told them it's a breach of the treaty. The door, reluctantly, admitted that Sean probably had the right to enter and opened. There you go. It will sulk for the night and leave you in peace. You can order food from the system. Comms are open and you're on the XCC penny tonight. Knock yourself out. The bar is where I left it. I hope, and you can call me if you want anything. We'll see you down there when you're ready. Take your time. Gary seemed torn for a moment, but then asked, We both know the XCC is going to blow up my comms the moment I'm alone. Fine, that's the job. What the hell do I tell them? Sean was about to smile and wave when the image of the boy pulling himself onto that chair returned, and he remembered how far he had come. You tell them that Danu is looking after it, that the boy is one of her people, one of her own kind. I know her better than most, and she will rip them apart if she thinks there is a threat to him. She will also crush him if he is not what he appears. He tried to explain. For her, she is the earth. That's not an expression. It asks her things, and it does what she wants it to. Us, the plants, animals, the everything. She is willing to die for us, and she will not see us threatened. She can barely endure us being careless. I don't worry about much, but the day the XCC tries to force her to kill or wound someone, that is a day I don't want to be here. Tell them that. Gary nodded. Got it. She is not a weapon. The boy is under her care. Hurt him, and she will become one. He shook his head and rubbed tired eyes. Sean, when I woke up this morning, I had 60 Fae arriving and some lost luggage. This shit is way above my pay grade. Sean grinned at that. Looks like you got a promotion. Imagine what it was like for me. Gary laughed at that. Nope. You should be in the XCCC, not me. Sean flashed his eyebrows. You think they didn't try? What have they got to offer me? Danu is young and idealistic. XCC is grinding the same groves it did when I was a child. I'm rich, old, and protected by the most powerful ally mankind has ever had. I picked my side. I'm just sorry that they sometimes think that there have to be two. If you ever have to make a choice like that, stick with the one that will stand right in front of you and fight, and not the one that shouts orders from light years away. I'll see you at the bar. Danu slid the fresh cup towards Michael and said, Isn't that more interesting? The boy seemed to consider it. Are you like this all the time? He suddenly seemed to realize that he was probably being rude. I'm sorry. I mean, are you always trying to look like your people? Danu lifted her own drink and began to move back to the fire. No, only when it doesn't matter. I save the I'm the planet you're standing on for the important stuff. You need to understand that I was born with a vast people, a people that fill the stars. I don't have what you have, what my mother had. I didn't grow with them. I didn't know them until they were already powerful, prideful, and someone like me existed only in their imaginations. In the words of a poet, I tread softly because I tread on their dreams. So I stay here and enjoy my world. I fix what I think needs to be fixed, but they are adults, and I don't interfere with other people's lives unless I absolutely must. She waved him to sit down. Don't confuse that with how I speak to power. A soft voice in a loud room is soon lost, and my people are very loud. But they know, they are clever, and they are beginning to love me as much as I love them. I'm not in a hurry. Michael seemed to take that in easily. My people are much simpler. All they want to do is mate and eat, and sometimes both at the same time. I tried to, squiggle a few of them, but they just grew more legs, a hard shell, and hid under rocks. Danu had to keep her face straight for that one. If by squiggle you mean you speeded time up, that happens so many times here that they actually have a word for it. Give someone a few million years and they turn into crabs or try to. Definitely wasn't your fault. The boy looked like he had just passed an exam. So it wasn't just me? Cool. What's the word? Carcinization. Look it up the next time you try anything like that. Tell me, where did you learn your manners? Actually, where did you learn to find Earth? My father couldn't find directions with a map. Michael seemed to jump a little at that. Oh, I almost forgot. I can't tell you her name, I promised. But when I was trying to come here, I got a little lost, and I heard someone singing. He looked like he was afraid to offend Danu, but she simply nodded. So I was in, the underneath, and I heard someone singing. She was singing alone and really, really softly, but I was afraid I was going the wrong way, so I moved to the above. Danu poured some extra Baileys into her cup. My humans call it the between, but I prefer your terms. Go on. So she got really upset when I appeared, but then I told her I just liked her singing and was passing by, and she almost stopped shooting at me. That made Danu lean forward and put her cup down. Almost? Well, she kept sending what she called probes, but they were just little weapons, so I sent them back. Then I asked if she was okay, 'cause we were nowhere. It was just the boring dark. She said the dark was where she lived, that her people guarded important things. She was very cool. I told her I was going to visit Earth, and she said that was one of the important things she guarded, and was I sure I'd be welcome. He looked a little anxious. So I told her it was okay because I was going to see Danu. I mean, I wasn't lying, but I don't think if I said your dad told me to go, she would understand. Danu nodded. I think you were very wise." Michael seemed to be growing into his story. So I asked her if she could tell me anything about Earth, about how to behave and stuff that I should probably know, like where it was. She thought that was really funny, so she sent me a link to her database. That's why I had to promise not to tell anyone, because I didn't know that all those funny words and numbers that were in the way meant stop, so I just copied everything. Then she got really mad. I felt really sorry, so I fixed all the numbers in her engines because they were very silly, and then she left. Did I do something wrong? Danu reflected that the boy had appeared in front of one of the Dark Fleet and complimented it on its singing. After the ship had fired probably the finest weapons that Earth space had ever created at him, and he had slapped down all its probes. Then a child had asked it for directions like it was a policeman. The poor thing must have been beyond confused. It had sent some tourist information and then found that an unknown, indestructible, and incomprehensible Xeno had just sucked up its entire database, and that it was looking for me. Then this unknown creature rebuilds its engines to be less silly, the most private and defended place outside the core, and that must have been one hell of a day. How squishy was the time when this happened? Because I haven't heard about it yet. Michael thought about it for a while. Pretty squishy, I think. You think it's still a thing to happen out there? I don't know. How many times were there words and numbers to go past before you stopped? 12, I think. Danu smiled. Then we are fine. We are only at 9 right now, and I won't tell anyone if you don't. I do want you to send them all to me, though, just in case. She didn't need a just in case, she hoped, but she would be level number 13 if it ever came to it. So that's how you found your way here. Very clever, and you should always ask for help. Michael seemed really pleased that Danu was happy. It had been hard. He had never dared to speak to a ship before, even when they had flown right over him. So I read some of the information, and some of it was brilliant, like all the stuff they teach the metal humans, how to behave, how not to break people by mistake, why it's really important to have parents and a pet. He looked really closely at her. So I would like to meet a dog and a cat and a lizard and a canary. That raised a laugh from Danu. Tomorrow we can do that. What is it with small boys and puppies? Did you read everything that you found? Michael cringed. No, it started to be horrid, so I stopped. The metal humans have to stop at 3 before they are fostered, so that's what I did. Danu sighed with relief. Good. The rest is indeed horrid, and that's where you stop until I tell you differently, okay? This seemed important, so Michael just agreed with a quick nod. So, am I fostered then? Only that's what it said would happen if I was a metal human anyway. The decision was easy and quickly made. There really wasn't anyone else anyway. Danu stood up. Yes, Michael of the Stars, you are now my foster child until you choose to follow your own path. I will teach you what I can and learn all that you are willing to share. Come on, I'll show you your room and you can get some rest. I think you have had a very long day and tomorrow will be the same, although it will include puppies and kittens. The room was nothing special yet, with a warm bed and high ceilings. An ancient fireplace that had been modernized was embedded in the center wall, and 2 large windows were currently firmly closed against the rain. An empty bookshelf, a dark wood wardrobe, and a rudimentary desk completed the list. A low door led to the rudimentary guest bathroom. Danu turned to Michael and said, "This will do for tonight. You can change anything you like tomorrow and make it your own. You don't need comms to call me, just call me in the underneath and I'll hear you wherever I am." Michael looked like he had slipped into a dream. I've never had a room. I just wandered around. What do I use it for? Danu paused for a minute. A human would never ask, and she had never really thought about it. Well, I use mine to rest when I want to. I dress there. I keep my nice things there. I keep books and media I like there. Sometimes I sit and watch it rain. Sometimes I sit and enjoy the sun. And quite a lot of the time, I use it to learn new music and new songs that I'm not ready to play for other people. I have quite a lot of instruments, including a piano, that you can use or copy. That's it, really. Michael took that all very seriously. So that is your place. You have made it important to you. And this is my place? I can make it important to me? Danu wasn't quite ready for the slightly odd phrasing, but the sentiment was correct. Yes to both. She moved to the bed and pulled down the duvet. You sleep under this soft bit. I didn't figure that out for my first few days. Now I'll leave you to rest and go and talk to your XCC man. Good night, Michael. I'll see you early in the morning for breakfast. His mouth half opened, but Danu raised her hand. No more questions tonight. I think we both need to think about what has been decided already. Sleep well. Michael watched as Danu closed his door. What a very interesting idea. Everything here had an inside and an outside. He turned to the little boy that was sitting on his desk. You don't mind if I take your room? I don't mean to interrupt you, and Danu didn't remember to ask. The boy seemed to think about it and then shrugged. No, it would be nice to have company. Do you sing? Michael smiled. Yes, lots, but it's a secret for now. Danu is much better than me. The boy seemed happy with that, and went back into squishy time, so Michael figured it would all work itself out. Time here was definitely thicker and fuller than he was used to. He might ask Sean about it. Sean was waiting in the bar with the XCC chap when Danu descended. He looked at her face and began making a fat frog, her consolation drink of choice. Gary, I'm going to need to talk to your boss. That's just a heads up, I'll be calling a lot of people. Suffice it to say that you can head home whenever you like. Michael is staying with me for the foreseeable future. She turned to Sean. You might as well get the doors open. This is going to be the new normal for a while. I'll be out with the boy most of tomorrow, I think. I'm just making it up as I go along. Both Gary and Sean spoke. Michael? Danu nodded. Yes, he has a name now. Eddie sent him here to get one, among other motives that I haven't figured out yet. Sean just shook his head. For a man that died a good while ago, he does keep sticking his oar in. Restless ghost, that fella. He passed Danu the cocktail with a flourish. Here, have your teenagers drink. One day I'll get you onto the stuff we grown-ups drink. Gary was confused. Then he decided to just not ask. Instead he said, I'll be glad to get home. I like the boy, but I have my own at home who are wondering where I've disappeared off to. The rain is gone. I'm going to take a walk and have a look around. I'll see you later. He felt about 10 years younger as he walked out the door. Sean watched the young man leave. I reckon you made another friend there. He's a home bird if ever I saw one. Danu sighed. I know, which is a pity. XCC will post him nearby out of sheer habit. They'll make him an offer he can't refuse. He just doesn't know it yet. Sean was surprised. That's a lot of messing about. He only met the boy for a day. Danu nodded. Aye, but you heard him. Michael likes him, trusts him, and he has children around the same age as our waif. Add that to XCC's brand of practical ruthlessness, and I'll bet he's back here in a week, family in tow. Sean swore. Are you going to stop them? Danu shrugged. I hate to admit it, but I agree with them. Michael's going to need friends. She turned back to business. I'm going to make those calls and then a few visits. Michael can contact me directly. He doesn't need comms, so I'll be home quickly if I need to be. You, on the other hand, will have to use old-fashioned methods. Just shout at whatever AI is currently watching the place until they find me. No point in trying to call me. Their comms are too secure for the likes of civilians and riffraff. So he doesn't need comms? Anything else he can do that I don't know about? Danu laughed. He can do the things I can do, at least a little. He can twist time and talk to ghosts and break every code the human race has ever created. I wouldn't worry too much, you gave him marshmallows. Oh, and get ready to have a puppy running around. Buy whatever you think is needed, I've never had one. A puppy? Here? My money is on a puppy, but it might be a kitten or a lizard or a canary. Sean scratched the back of his neck unconsciously. I'm allergic to cats. Sorry, Sean, if he gets a kitten you won't be. I'm absolutely certain about that. I'll talk to you later. Whatever response Sean was going to make was silenced when Danu simply walked to the front door and pinned it open, allowing the few idling men that had been waiting to push into the pub. One of them was a stranger to her, so she took a closer look. The AI that had probably been posted to Gary's car, now wearing a decent avatar. She grabbed his arm and nodded outside. She released him and stepped into the quickly drying evening and waited. She turned as he stepped out behind her. I'll take a wild guess and say your Intel AI, Posted to watch the boy. Tricky job around me. That makes you a senior staffer. Posted straight out of headquarters because of the rush, I imagine with an open comm to Fleet just in case things here go sideways. The avatar just nodded. Good. I hate it when XCC tries to bullshit me. Tell your director and the AI Alliance that I'll be there in 10 minutes to discuss the situation. You can tell Fleet to bugger off out of my airspace and go play soldiers somewhere else. In fact, tell them to send someone to the meeting. They always love rushing around, they might as well make themselves useful. Got that? The avatar looked down briefly. XCC confirms his attendance and ditto with the AI Alliance. Fleet is scrambling to find someone senior that's still sober enough to attend and nearby. Do you wish me to leave? Sober? Oh, the time zones. Their problem. You are welcome to stay. Just don't disturb the boy. I want you listening to the meeting. Saves me from repeating myself. Tell Sean who you are. You're our landline if he wants help. If that happens, you just wait for me. That child remains untouched. Drink the expensive stuff and buy a round or two and learn to sing. You're human, act like it. Off you go. Yes, Danu, of course. Danu really liked the term underneath. It described what she was going to do so much better than between, because it wasn't between anything for her. She didn't fly anywhere. She just concentrated on where she wanted to be and went. Most of the 10 minutes would be spent getting through security. Sean was a little uncertain as to his role here. Was he the friendly uncle? Too old? Grandfather? He wasn't going to explain that one to Irene the next time she showed up. Babysitter? Aye. The pub was getting a little noisy since the AI was apparently under orders to get the entire pub shit-faced on the best whiskey he had on the top shelf. He had resorted to sleight of hand to feed the worst of them stuff he wouldn't use to clean a toilet. This was not how he liked his pub. Torn and confused, he compromised on checking on the boy first and cutting off the whiskey if he was awake. He didn't creep up the stairs. He just moved slowly because he was tired. That was it. He opened Michael's door only a few inches to respect his privacy, not because he was worried about what he might find within. Definitely. What he saw did make him furrow his brow for a minute until he solved the mystery, but nobody needed to call the Fleet in just yet. Then he walked downstairs and cut off the whiskey anyway because feck 'em, pints are home for the rest of the night. The intel guy had a good voice, though. Danu checked that the coast was reasonably clear before she arrived at the gates. The night had fallen here, and the subtropical heat was setting down. The feel of 1,000,000 people surrounding her could grate on her temper if she let it, so she simply changed into a nice sari and waved at the guards as they ushered her through. She was in a hurry tonight, or she might have paid a little more attention to the towering edifice that was the hub of humanity. It was big, shiny, expensive, and heavily armed. Not that the knives were visible, not to almost anyone else. Her humans at work. It was like Michaels's crabs sticking shiny things to their shells. She loved them dearly, but if anything got close enough to attack her home, then the sun had already gone nova. They liked them, though, and that was enough for her. Anyway, the sort of people that would happily spend their lives designing and building such things were best kept occupied harmlessly. She just wished they had stuck to Lego. Surprisingly, the main door remained closed until a hurried avatar arrived to authorize it. Danu narrowed her eyes at that. She was being polite. She could have just gone straight to the office. Therefore, something was off. I'm so sorry, Danu. Forgive me. Where is Freya? Since when does the chief of security ignore me turning up? I'm the biggest threat she knows about, and I've seen her list. Did she decide to test her theory? No, Danu, she apologizes. Something came up. Did the skies darken and the stars begin weeping? Because I'm ahead of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse on her list, and I'm happening right now and right here. I'm sorry, Danu, I don't know. The director is waiting. Please let me walk you up. Someone had taken her seriously enough, or they had seen her expression. The short corridor to the lifts was entirely empty, and they were all waiting. She concentrated on what she had to do, ignoring the rest for now. It was entirely possible that the director had organized her reception poorly so that she would be distracted. Instead of the usual boardroom and screens, the director had set up a small table with 4 seats. A bottle of whiskey sat in the middle, alongside a neglected set of water glasses. It looked like a friendly game of perhaps high-stakes poker. The director and the AI waved while the fleet, probably an admiral, sat holding his glass with the exact look of someone kicked out of bed and stuffed into a uniform for a meeting. Best diffuse that one first. She sat down at what was obviously her place and raised her glass as the AI filled it. All right, I'm sorry to drag you out like this. I didn't know it was going to happen either. You can thank the itinerant Irishman that is my father for sending me his newest project. I'm going to talk, and you can just listen for the moment, because I'm the only one who knows anything useful. The director sat back. I can live with that. No slideshow, I hope? Danu quelled that question with a look. So, Michael is of my kind. His planet is young, and he heard me singing in the underneath. That's the between to you lot. He was lonely, so he listened. He eventually spoke to Eddie and got vague directions to Earth. I'll get back to that. Anyway, he is well-mannered and polite, and he is determined to grow. He wants to learn music for the moment, but who knows? He is exactly as he appears, except that he is also a planet with many of the traits I and my mother have. Here on Earth, he has whatever power I allow him unless someone does something stupid. His innate power is far greater than, say, the fleet's. He has far better control of time than I do, and he looks deeper into it than I can. If you shoot at him, he might send you into tomorrow. If you shoot at me, he will break you and time itself to help. He's a small boy. The AI hesitantly interrupted. No offense to you, Danu, but why? He doesn't know you. We do. We all have reasons to trust you. Danu smiled. That is down to your excellent training. You have very successfully turned him into someone that is acutely aware of the costs and responsibilities of being around more fragile folk. Thank you for that. The AI blanked at that statement. I do not understand. We are unfamiliar with Michael. Danu lifted her glass. Remember what I said about his abilities with time? That brings me to Fleet. She turned to the Admiral. I'm sorry. I don't think we have met. Sorry to have dragged you from your bed for this, but you would better hear it from me and not some excitable intel drone. Someone somewhere squawked indignantly. The Admiral seemed to pull himself together. My apologies, Danu. I have been less than gracious. I am Admiral Watts, 2nd Fleet. I'm on leave on Earth. I wasn't expecting a call. I have heard almost nothing of you until about 10 minutes ago. I thought you were a myth. Now the XCCE tells me you are very real. A pleasure. Yes, I'm real, and yes, I am actually the consciousness of the planet. That about sums that up. Anyway, Michael interrupted a dark fleet ship on his way here. He was looking for directions and heard her singing. I'm guessing it happens in the future since I hadn't heard about it. He sucked up all the intel he needed to get here and behave properly. More importantly, he has taken AI training to heart, including fostering and pets. I am now his foster parent, and I think we're getting a puppy tomorrow. Questions? The director did. Is he a threat? Do I need to worry about him? Most importantly, can I help? Danu answered easily. Yes, yes, and yes. He is young and powerful. That makes him a threat. Do you need to worry? Yes, he's a child. If you're not going to worry about children, then you need a new job. The help I need is that you need to make it clear to everyone involved that if there is an issue, they come to me first. I guarantee that any violence offered against him will be returned fourfold if he lashes out in response. And then you would have to deal with me and probably his grandmother if she hears about it. She let that sit with them for a moment. Nobody wants that. If I feel it's slipping sideways, I'll have a plan and we'll carry it out, regardless of my own feelings. I will let nothing threaten our home, well-intentioned or not, even if it's my own intentions. Personal is not the same as important. The AI spoke up. We have some very specialized people that deal with early development. May I send you one? It is not easy to raise an immortal, and it's important to remember that sometimes we fail. It's rare, but they are too powerful to inflict on the universe until their personalities are developed. Danu nodded in agreement. No doubt the director has already sent word that Gary Sumner is being redeployed. Have them meet with him and then come find me in the pub in the evening. You are all going to stay at arm's length until I have a handle on this. She looked at the Admiral. Please pass on my apologies to the home fleet. I was rather busy at the time, but, well, I don't react well to those sorts of things hanging over my head. It was probably uncalled for. Admiral Watts finally relaxed enough to smile. Are you kidding? I'm Second Fleet. I'm going to be taking the piss out of them forever about how many ships does it take to threaten a child. Seriously, though, that's their job. Move first, questions later. I don't think they'll do much except see how much faster they can do it next time. He thought for a moment. Although probably not over your home. Danu stood and held out her hand to the Admiral. That's it for the moment. Please feel free to drop in for a drink. Mayo is particularly wet at this time of year. If you two don't mind, I need to speak to the director about something else for a few minutes. Danu sat down again and waited for the others to leave. We need privacy for this. The real thing. The director just turned to his console and called out a series of commands. All he got in return was a blinking red light. You have never asked for that before? He added nothing. He just waited. The dark ship that Michael intercepted was from the future. He didn't realize what he was doing, but he scanned it all the way through to level 12. But, oh shit. Exactly. He hasn't read any of it yet because he got upset at level 4. If, for any reason whatsoever, good, bad, or indifferent, someone wants to shoot at him, know this. The dark ship thought he was attacking. She opened up with everything she had. He didn't even get an itch, let alone a scratch. She opened up with whatever hell we have on level 12 in a couple of centuries, and then remember that he's only a child of my people. The director laughed, which managed to surprise Danu. Oh, goddess. It was so much easier when we could just feed you the hearts of our enemies. Fine, I'll make damn sure no one moves against him. Ever. Was that it? Or have you worse news? Danu saw he meant it. Good. Actually, I had been wondering why Freya didn't meet me at the door, so I checked. Tell me, Director, how the hell did you piss off a planet of fanatical, nocturnal, and subterranean miners? That one threw off the director in a way she hadn't predicted. What? Look, it was a mistake. An unsupervised engineer on a damn library ship. We fixed all we could. He realized that he was beginning to rant. Sorry, Danu. It's a sore point. The Wendig system, we dropped a moon on them years ago. It's a fucking story that never seems to end. Why? Because they have been holding Freya's son for weeks. Every Thursday she has been receiving a body part to provide proof of life. I have dealt with that part, although it's only the beginning for them both. The Wendig are not a gentle people, apparently. Danu pulled up a map. I didn't pay attention as I arrived, mostly because I rarely look that deep. I found her son nearly 1.5 kilometers underground. Then I checked on Freya and she was sitting with a picture in one hand and a gun in the other. She is let's call her a fan of having a goddess. She would never turn down the chance to meet me. It's something I look forward to when I have to put up with a meeting with you. What the fuck are they doing to Freya? And why am I finding it out from you now? The director moved to his console and pulled up files with unsealed fury. We interrupted a genocide. An engineer took offense when they killed her captain, as they tend to do, but then it all went metaphysical. We sent everything we had, dug them out, and nailed the bastards that started it. Problem is, they live underground, and that gives you strange ideas about who is holding the roof up. Then it gets weirder from there. The director picked up his comms, but Danu cut him off. We have a little time. How long will it take you to assemble forces capable of working at those depths? Avatars only, or this will probably fail. Organics need to take the 2 buildings, the rest is clearing. Less than 40 minutes if I have a destination. Clearing what, exactly? Danu started to draw lines on the map. Well, for a start, they are mining under your building. Mining in the medieval sense, as in undermining. A big enough bang and this whole place will fall over. I would prefer they didn't do that. They have a perfectly nice factory across the river, making nothing but explosives and shipping them to this place. Which is a consulate? That's big for a consulate. It's the head of the tunnel. Yeah, well, we ran their system for a couple of decades. That was our command center for Wendig, and afterwards they just sort of inherited it. Shit. What you said. I can pull the oxygen from the mine shafts before you send anyone in, and make our unfriendlies fall over. I'll seal off the explosives right now, just in case. You can call me when it's over and I'll bury the lot. She stood up to leave, her mind already back on Michael. Wait, you can't just leave it like that. Danu waved her hand and the light turned green. Yes, I can. Call me when you need the oxygen cut and when I can fill those tunnels. Everything else is a you problem. Think of this as a professional courtesy for the meeting. I'm going to check on Freya. Then I'm going to go and look at the maps of Yellowstone again. I knew that volcano was unhappy. They must have messed with the magma chambers. How the fuck do you have an unhappy volcano? Danu shrugged. Well, a sense of timing and the fact that I might get hurt. You'd be surprised what walks softy when I'm nearby. Good night, Director. She wasn't there when he made the call. A tactical map followed by the instruction that oxygen is both useful and flammable but not a given. Not at those depths. Avatars can't choke, and they can't find themselves tearing at their own skin as the air disappears. They will never have to see strange machines await their tortured and fading end. Fleet 109 took control of the Wendig system in complete silence, and all the corpses were shipped home unmarked. Some of them arrived at speed and screaming, but everyone is a corpse if you attack Earth itself. At no point did the XCC issue a comment. All that was posted was, no further action required. The tunnels were never sealed, simply repurposed. The explosives factory now made quite a lot of money for the XCC after all.